The rain was getting heavier, and Kevin pulled his worn jacket tighter around his shoulders. The cardboard under the bridge had turned soggy hours ago, but it was still better than sleeping completely on the cold concrete. At 16, he had been living on the streets of downtown for 8 months now. Some days felt longer than others, and today was one of those long ones. Kevin wasn't like the other homeless people you might see in movies. He didn't have wild hair or dirty clothes on purpose. Every morning, he would walk to the public library, when it opened, and use their bathroom to wash his face and hands. He would comb his hair and try to look as normal as possible. The librarians knew him by now and never said anything when he spent his whole day there, reading books and using the computers. His backpack contained everything he owned: a change of clothes, a toothbrush, a notebook where he wrote down things he learned, and a small photo of his mother. She had died 2 years ago from cancer, and his father had never been in the picture. The foster homes were too full, and Kevin had aged out of the system faster than anyone expected. Sometimes he wondered what his life would have been like if things had gone differently. But Kevin had rules for himself. He never stole anything. He never begged for money. Instead, he collected bottles and cans from trash bins around the business district. Some store owners would pay him a few dollars to sweep their sidewalks or help them move boxes. It wasn't much, but it was honest work, and it helped him keep his pride. Tonight was different, though. The rain was coming down so hard that Kevin decided to look for better shelter. He remembered seeing some old warehouses on the other side of town where trucks used to load and unload goods. Most of them were empty now, but the buildings still had roofs that didn't leak. As Kevin walked through the industrial area, carrying his backpack and trying to stay dry, he noticed how quiet everything was. The streetlights were dim, and most of the buildings looked like they had been empty for years. It was the kind of place where people minded their own business, which was exactly what Kevin needed. He was almost at the warehouse district when he heard voices. Not the friendly kind of voices you hear during the day, but the kind that made you want to turn around and walk the other way. Kevin stopped and crouched behind a parked truck. His heart started beating faster. 3 men were standing next to a black car with tinted windows. They looked nervous and kept checking their phones. One of them was smoking a cigarette, and Kevin could see the red glow moving in the darkness. Something about the whole scene felt wrong. Then Kevin heard something that made his blood run cold. It was a girl's voice, and she was crying. The sound was coming from inside the car. One of the men opened the back door, and Kevin could see someone struggling inside. The girl looked young, maybe around 14 or 15. Her clothes looked expensive, and even in the dim light, Kevin could tell she was scared. "Please let me go," the girl said. "My dad will give you whatever you want, just please don't hurt me." One of the men laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. "Your dad's going to give us exactly what we want, Princess, $50 million. And until then, you're staying with us." $50 million. Kevin had never even seen $1,000 at one time, let alone 50 million. This girl's father must be incredibly rich. But right now, she was just a scared kid who needed help. The men started walking toward one of the empty buildings, forcing the girl to come with them. As they moved, the girl stumbled and dropped something. It looked like a small card or piece of plastic. The men didn't notice, but Kevin did. After they disappeared into the building, Kevin waited for what felt like forever. His mind was racing. He should call the police, but he didn't have a phone. He could try to find a payphone, but by the time he found one and convinced the police to believe him, these men might move the girl somewhere else. Kevin had learned not to trust adults very easily. Too many people had made promises they didn't keep. Too many people had looked at him like he was invisible or dangerous just because he was homeless. Would the police even believe a street kid who looked like he did? But this wasn't about him. This was about a girl who was in serious trouble. Kevin thought about his mother and what she would have wanted him to do. She had always taught him to help people when he could, even if it was risky. Quietly, Kevin crept over to where the girl had dropped whatever it was. In the dim light, he could see it was a student ID card. The name read Rachel Thompson and showed a picture of a pretty girl with long brown hair and a bright smile. The same girl he had just seen being forced into that building. The ID card also had the name of a private school that Kevin recognized. It was one of those expensive schools where rich kids went, the kind of place Kevin had never even dreamed of attending. But now he had proof of who this girl was, and maybe that would help somehow. Kevin looked at the building where the men had taken Rachel. It was 3 stories tall and had lots of broken windows. Some of the windows on the first floor were boarded up, but the higher floors looked like Swiss cheese. There were probably dozens of ways to get in and out if you knew what you were looking for. For the next 2 hours, Kevin watched the building. He counted how many men went in and out. He noticed that only one person stayed inside, while the other 2 took turns leaving, probably to get food or make phone calls. He also noticed that they didn't seem to know the building very well. They always used the same entrance and exit, like they hadn't bothered to explore the place. Kevin, on the other hand, had spent months learning how to survive in the city. He knew how to move quietly. He knew how to find ways into buildings that others missed. He knew how to stay hidden when he needed to. These were skills he had learned because his life depended on them. As the rain continued to fall, Kevin made a decision that would change everything. He was going to help Rachel Thompson, even though he had never met her before and even though she came from a world he could barely imagine. It was the right thing to do, and his mother had raised him to do the right thing. Kevin tucked Rachel's student ID into his pocket and started planning. He would need to be smart about this, he would need to be careful, but most importantly, he would need to be brave. Tomorrow, he would try to save a girl he didn't know, risking his own safety, for someone who probably didn't even know people like him existed. The rain kept falling, but Kevin didn't feel cold anymore. He had something to do, someone to help, and for the first time in months, he felt like his life had real purpose. Danny barely slept that night. He found a dry spot under an overpass about 2 blocks away from the warehouse, but every time he closed his eyes, he could hear Lily's voice asking to go home. By the time the sun came up, he had made his decision. Today, he was going to get her out of there. The first thing Danny needed to do was learn everything he could about that building and the men inside. He spent the morning watching from different hiding spots, noting every detail. The building had been some kind of factory years ago, with loading docks and multiple entrances. Most of the doors were chained shut, but the kidnappers were using a side entrance that had a broken lock. Danny counted 3 men total. The tall one with the beard seemed to be in charge. He was always giving orders to the other 2. The second man was shorter and kept smoking cigarettes, dropping the butts everywhere. The third guy was young, maybe in his 20s, and he seemed nervous about everything. They had a routine. Every few hours, 2 of them would leave in the black SUV while one stayed behind to watch Lily. They would come back with food, coffee, or to make phone calls from different locations. Danny figured they were smart enough not to use their phones near the building in case someone was trying to track them. During one of these trips, Danny got brave and moved closer to the building. He found the old fire escape he had spotted the night before. The metal ladder was rusty and some of the steps looked wobbly, but it seemed solid enough to hold his weight. More importantly, it led to a window on the 2nd floor that was just a big open hole in the brick wall. Danny also discovered something the kidnappers had missed. There was a basement entrance on the backside of the building hidden behind some old wooden pallets. The door was unlocked, and when Danny carefully pushed it open, he could see stairs leading up into the building. This could be his way in, but Danny knew he needed more than just a way inside. He needed a plan that would get Lily out safely without getting either of them hurt. The kidnappers had been watching the news on a portable radio, and Danny had overheard them talking about asking for $50 million. That meant they were serious about this and they wouldn't just let Lily go if they caught Danny trying to help her. As the day went on, Danny noticed that the kidnappers were getting more relaxed. They thought they were safe in their hideout. The nervous young guy had even fallen asleep during his watch shift around noon. That gave Danny an idea. Late in the afternoon, Danny put his plan into action. He waited until 2 of the men left in the SUV, leaving only the young nervous guy behind. Then Danny went to work creating a distraction. Behind the building, there were several large dumpsters filled with old papers and trash. Danny had learned how to make small controlled fires during his time on the streets. It was sometimes the only way to stay warm. He carefully started a small fire in one of the dumpsters, making sure it would create a lot of smoke but wouldn't spread to other buildings. The smoke started billowing up into the sky, and within minutes, Danny could hear the young kidnapper inside the building talking on his radio, sounding panicked. "There's a fire outside," he was saying. "I can see smoke everywhere. What should I do?" Danny couldn't hear the response, but a few minutes later, the young man came running out of the building to investigate. He looked around frantically, saw the smoking dumpster, and ran toward it with a small fire extinguisher. This was Danny's chance. While the kidnapper was busy dealing with the fire, Danny slipped through the basement entrance. His heart was pounding, so hard he was sure everyone in the building could hear it, but he forced himself to move quietly up the stairs. The inside of the building was dark and smelled like old grease and rust. Danny could hear voices coming from somewhere above him. Following the sound, he climbed a set of metal stairs to the second floor. The voices were getting clearer now, and one of them was definitely Lily's. Danny found them in what used to be an office space. Through a crack in the door, he could see Lily sitting in a chair with her hands tied behind her back. She looked tired and scared, but she didn't seem to be hurt. The room had one window that faced the front of the building, and Danny could see the young kidnapper outside still trying to put out the fire. Taking a deep breath, Danny quietly opened the door and stepped inside. Lily looked up and her eyes went wide with fear. "Don't scream," Danny whispered urgently. "I'm here to help you. My name is Danny." Lily stared at him for a moment, probably wondering if this was some kind of trick. Danny quickly pulled out her student ID card and showed it to her. "You dropped this last night," he said softly. "I saw what happened. I'm going to get you out of here." Tears started running down Lily's face, but they looked like tears of relief. "How?" she whispered back. Danny moved behind her chair and started working on the rope around her wrists. His hands were shaking, but he had gotten good at untying knots during his time on the streets. "There's a fire escape on the back of the building," he explained as he worked. "We're going to climb down and then run, but we have to be really quiet and really fast." The rope finally came loose, and Lily rubbed her wrists where it had been cutting into her skin. Danny helped her stand up, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Here was this girl from a world of private schools and expensive clothes, and here was Danny in his worn-out jacket with holes in his shoes. But none of that mattered right now. "Can you run?" Danny asked. Lily nodded. "I think so. My legs are a little stiff, but I can run." They could hear the young kidnapper coming back into the building, talking loudly on his radio about the fire being out. Danny and Lily needed to move now. Danny led her to the window that opened onto the fire escape. The metal platform creaked under their weight, and Danny held his breath, hoping it would hold. Slowly, they started climbing down. Each step seemed to take forever, and the metal groaned with every movement. They were halfway down when they heard shouting from inside the building. The kidnapper had discovered that Lily was gone. Danny and Lily looked at each other with panic in their eyes. "Faster," Danny whispered, and they started moving as quickly as they dared. They reached the ground just as they heard footsteps running through the building above them. Danny grabbed Lily's hand and they ran toward the maze of abandoned buildings and empty lots that Danny knew like the back of his hand. Behind them, they could hear more shouting and the sound of car doors slamming. The other kidnappers had returned and were starting to search for them. But Danny had one advantage they didn't have. He knew how to disappear in a city, and now he was going to teach Lily how to do it too. As they ran through the shadows between buildings, Danny felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in months, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Danny led Lily through a maze of alleys and abandoned lots that most people didn't even know existed. His heart was still racing from the escape, but his mind was focused on one thing: getting Lily somewhere safe. Behind them, they could hear car engines and shouting voices getting farther away. The kidnappers were searching for them, but they were looking in all the wrong places. After running for what felt like forever, Danny finally stopped behind an old church that had been closed for years. Both of them were breathing hard, and Lily looked like she was about to collapse. "Are you okay?" Danny asked, looking at her with concern. Lily nodded, but Danny could see that she was exhausted and still scared. Her expensive clothes were now dirty and torn from climbing down the fire escape and running through the rough streets. She looked completely out of place in this part of town. "We need to call the police," Lily said between breaths. "And my dad. He's probably worried sick about me." Danny hesitated. He knew they needed to contact the authorities, but he also knew that once they did, everything would change. The police would ask questions. They would want to know who he was, and why a homeless kid was in this part of town. They might not believe his story, or worse, they might think he was somehow involved with the kidnappers. "I don't have a phone," Danny said quietly. "Do you?" Lily shook her head. "They took mine when they grabbed me yesterday." Danny thought for a moment. There was one place he could take her where he knew they would help, no questions asked. It was a place that had been kind to him when most of the world ignored him. "I know someone who can help us," Danny said. "Her name is Sister Maria. She runs a community center about 6 blocks from here. She helps people like me, and she has a phone we can use." As they walked toward the community center, Lily kept looking around nervously. This neighborhood was nothing like the safe, clean areas where she lived. There were broken windows, graffiti on the walls, and people sitting on stoops who watched them pass with curious eyes. "You know this area really well," Lily observed. Danny nodded. "I've been living around here for almost a year now. You learn the streets pretty fast when you have to." "Living here?" Lily asked, and then understanding crossed her face. "You mean you don't have a home?" "Not the kind you're thinking of," Danny said simply. He wasn't embarrassed about it, but he also wasn't sure how to explain his life to someone who had probably never worried about where she would sleep or when she would eat next. When they reached the community center, Sister Maria was outside sweeping the steps. She was a small woman in her 60s who had devoted her life to helping people that society often forgot about. When she saw Danny approaching with a girl she didn't recognize, she immediately knew something serious had happened. "Danny," she said, setting down her broom. "What's going on?" "This is Lily," Danny said. "She was kidnapped yesterday and I helped her escape. We need to call the police and her family." Sister Maria didn't hesitate or ask for more details. She simply nodded and led them inside. The community center was small but warm, with donated furniture and inspirational posters on the walls. It smelled like coffee and the soup they served to anyone who was hungry. While Sister Maria called the police, Danny and Lily sat in the main room. The difference between them was even more obvious now. Lily kept checking her appearance in the reflection of the window, clearly uncomfortable with how she looked. Danny, on the other hand, seemed completely at home in this simple, humble place. "Thank you," Lily said suddenly, "for saving me. I don't know why you did it, but thank you." Danny looked at her, surprised by the question. "What do you mean, why? You needed help." "But you don't even know me," Lily said. "And it was dangerous. You could have been hurt." Danny shrugged. "My mom always told me that when you see someone in trouble, you help them if you can. It doesn't matter who they are." Before Lily could respond, the police arrived. 2 officers came in, followed quickly by a man in an expensive suit who looked like he had been running. The moment Lily saw him, she started crying. "Dad!" she shouted, jumping up and running into his arms. Robert Chen was one of the richest men in the city, with businesses all over the world. He was used to solving problems with money and influence. But for the past day and a half, he had felt completely helpless. No amount of money could guarantee his daughter's safety once she had been taken. "Are you hurt?" he asked Lily, holding her tight and checking her for injuries. "I'm okay, Dad. This boy saved me. His name is Danny." Robert looked over at Danny, who was standing awkwardly by the wall. The contrast was striking. Robert, in his $1,000 suit, and Danny in his worn clothes with his beat-up backpack. But Robert wasn't thinking about their differences. He was thinking about the fact that this teenager had risked his own safety to save his daughter. The police officers started asking questions, and Danny told them everything he had seen and heard. He described the kidnappers, their car, the building where they had kept Lily, and how he had planned and executed the rescue. The officers took notes and asked for more details, clearly impressed by how much useful information Danny had gathered. "You did good, kid," one of the officers said to Danny. "Most people would have just walked away." After the police finished taking their statements, Robert approached Danny. He had been watching this young man carefully, trying to figure out how to thank someone who had given him back the most important thing in his life. "Danny," Robert said, "I owe you more than I can ever repay. You saved my daughter's life." Danny looked uncomfortable with the attention. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Robert said firmly. "You did what almost no one would do. Most people would have been too scared or too worried about their own safety. But you chose to help someone you didn't even know." 3 weeks had passed since the rescue, and Danny's life had turned completely upside down. The story of how a homeless teenager saved a billionaire's daughter had spread across the news faster than wildfire. Reporters wanted to interview him. People recognized him on the street, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about the boy who risked everything for a stranger. Danny hated the attention. He wasn't comfortable with cameras and microphones being pushed in his face everywhere he went. All he had done was help someone who needed it, and he couldn't understand why that was such big news. But the one good thing that came from all the media coverage was that people started donating money to Sister Maria's community center. Within 2 weeks, they had received enough donations to keep the place running for an entire year. Robert Chen had kept his word too. He had written a large check to the community center and had even visited personally to see what other help they needed. But more than that, he couldn't stop thinking about Danny and what the boy had taught him about real courage and kindness. Meanwhile, Lily was struggling with her own thoughts. Going back to her private school and her comfortable life felt strange after what she had experienced. She kept thinking about Danny sleeping on the streets while she complained about things like having too much homework or not liking what the cook made for dinner. She had always known that poor people existed, but she had never really understood what that meant until she met Danny. One afternoon, Lily convinced her father to drive her to the community center. She told him she wanted to thank Danny again, but really she just wanted to understand his world better. When they arrived, they found Danny in the back room, helping Sister Maria organize donated clothes. "Hey, Danny," Lily said, feeling awkward. Since the rescue, they had only seen each other during police interviews and court proceedings. "How are you doing?" Danny looked up from the box of winter coats he was sorting. "I'm okay, how about you? Are you feeling better?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Lily said. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Would you like to come have dinner at our house sometime? My dad and I have been talking, and we think it would be nice." Danny hesitated. He had seen pictures of the Chen family's mansion on the news. It was the kind of place with gates and security guards and rooms bigger than most apartments. He couldn't imagine himself fitting in there. "I don't know," Danny said honestly. "That's not really my kind of place." "Please," Lily said. "I know it might seem weird, but I really want you to come. My dad does too." Robert, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "Danny, I know our worlds are very different, but Lily is right. We'd both like to get to know you better. And I have an idea I'd like to discuss with you." Danny looked back and forth between them, then at Sister Maria, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay," Danny said finally. "I guess I could come for dinner." 2 days later, Danny found himself standing outside the biggest house he had ever seen. Robert had sent a car to pick him up, which felt strange enough, but now he was looking at a place that seemed more like a hotel than a home. He had borrowed some better clothes from the community center's donation pile, but he still felt completely out of place. Lily met him at the front door, and Danny was surprised to see that she seemed as nervous as he felt. "I'm glad you came," she said, leading him inside. "I wasn't sure you would." The inside of the house was even more impressive than the outside. Everything looked expensive and perfect, like something from a magazine. Danny tried not to stare, but it was hard not to be amazed by the crystal chandeliers and the paintings on the walls. At dinner, Danny sat at a table that could have seated 20 people. The food was delicious, but he felt uncomfortable having someone serve him when he was used to serving others at the community center. Robert and Lily tried to make conversation, asking about his life and his interests. But Danny could tell they didn't really understand his world any more than he understood theirs. After dinner, Robert asked Danny to join him in his office. The room was filled with awards and photos of Robert meeting important people. Behind his desk was a window that looked out over the entire city. "Danny," Robert said, "I want to offer you something, but I need you to hear me out before you say no." Danny nodded, curious about what Robert had in mind. "I've been thinking a lot about what you did for Lily, and about what you asked for in return," Robert continued. "You could have asked for anything, money, a job, a place to live. But instead you asked me to help other people. That tells me a lot about who you are." Robert walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights. "I've been successful in business, but I've never done anything as brave or as important as what you did that night. I want to give you an opportunity to build a real future for yourself." "What kind of opportunity?" Danny asked. "I want to help you get into a good school, and then college if you're interested," Robert said. "I've already talked to some people, and there's a boarding school about an hour from here that specializes in helping kids who have had difficult backgrounds. They have an excellent academic program, and they also provide counseling and support to help students adjust." Danny stared at him, not sure he had heard correctly. "You want to send me to school?" "I want to give you choices," Robert said. "Right. Now you're surviving day to day, but you're smart and you have potential. With the right education and support, you could do anything you want with your life." Danny felt overwhelmed. Part of him was excited by the possibility, but another part of him was scared. "What about Sister Maria and the community center? What about the people I know on the streets?" "You could still visit them," Robert said. "And maybe someday with a good education you could help them in ways you never imagined. You could become a social worker or a teacher or even start your own organization to help homeless kids." Danny thought about his mother and what she would have wanted for him. She had always believed in education and had dreamed of him going to college someday, but she had also taught him to be loyal to the people who had helped him. "Can I think about it?" Danny asked. "Of course," Robert said. "Take all the time you need. But Danny, I want you to know that this isn't charity. This is an investment in someone I believe in." That night, Danny went back to the community center with his head spinning. Sister Maria was waiting for him with a cup of hot chocolate and a knowing smile. "So," she said, "what did Mr. Chen want to talk to you about?" Danny told her everything, and when he finished, Sister Maria was quiet for a long moment. "What do you think I should do?" Danny asked. Sister Maria smiled. "I think you should stop being afraid of having a good life," she said. "You've spent so long taking care of everyone else that you've forgotten it's okay to let someone take care of you for a change. But what if I don't fit in? What if I can't keep up with the other students? Then you'll learn and you'll grow." Sister Maria said, "That's what school is for. And Danny, remember that you're not leaving your old life behind, you're building on it. Everything you've learned about kindness and courage and helping others, that's going to make you better at whatever you choose to do." As Danny lay on his cot that night, he realized that Sister Maria was right. This was his chance to honor his mother's memory and maybe find a way to help even more people in the future. Robert pulled out his wallet and started counting bills, but Danny stepped back. "I don't want money," Danny said quietly. Robert stopped, surprised. In his world, everything had a price and everyone wanted something. "Then what can I do for you? How can I thank you?" Danny looked around the community center, at Sister Maria, who was cleaning up the coffee cups, at the simple furniture and the donated books on the shelves. "Maybe you could help this place," Danny said. "Sister Maria helps a lot of people like me. She could use the support more than I could use the money." It was such an unexpected response that Robert didn't know what to say. Here was a kid who had been living on the streets, who probably didn't know where his next meal was coming from, and he was asking for help for others instead of himself. Lily, who had been listening to the conversation, looked at her father with an expression he had never seen before. She was seeing him through different eyes, and she was seeing Danny in a way that made her realize how much she had to learn about the world outside her protected life. "Dad," Lily said, "I think we need to do more than just say thank you." 2 years later, Danny stood in front of the bathroom mirror in his dorm room, adjusting his tie for what felt like the 100th time. Today was graduation day at Riverside Academy, and he still couldn't quite believe he had made it this far. The scared, hungry kid who used to sleep under bridges seemed like a different person now. The boarding school had been everything Robert promised and more. The first few months were tough. Danny had to work twice as hard as everyone else just to catch up on the basics. While other students complained about homework, Danny was grateful for every book, every lesson, every chance to learn something new. His teachers quickly noticed his determination, and several of them stayed after class to give him extra help. But the best part wasn't the grades or the college acceptance letters that had started arriving last month. The best part was that Danny had found his purpose. He knew exactly what he wanted to do with his life, and today he was going to start making it happen. After the graduation ceremony, Danny found Robert and Lily waiting for him by the parking lot. Lily had grown up a lot in the past 2 years, too. She was now a senior in high school and had spent her summers volunteering at homeless shelters and food banks. The experience of being kidnapped and meeting Danny had changed her perspective on everything. "Congratulations, graduate," Robert said, shaking Danny's hand with genuine pride. Over the past 2 years, their relationship had evolved from grateful benefactor and recipient to something that felt more like family. "Thanks," Danny said, "for everything. I know I've said it before, but I really mean it." "So what's next?" Lily asked. Though she already knew the answer, Danny had been talking about his plans for months. "First, I start college in the fall," Danny said with a grin. "Social work major, just like I planned. But before that, I have something else I need to do." They drove back to the city together, and Danny felt a familiar mix of excitement and nervousness as they got closer to his old neighborhood. He had visited the community center many times over the past 2 years, but today was special. Today he was coming back not as someone who needed help, but as someone ready to provide it. Sister Maria was waiting for them at the community center, along with about 30 teenagers who looked just like Danny had 2 years ago. Some were homeless, some were in foster care, and some were just kids from rough neighborhoods who needed someone to believe in them. "Everyone," Sister Maria announced, "I want you to meet Danny. 2 years ago, he was living on the streets just like some of you. Today, he's a high school graduate heading to college in the fall." Danny looked out at the faces staring back at him. He could see the doubt in some of their eyes, the same doubt he would have had if someone had told him this story 2 years ago. But he could also see hope in others, and that's what he focused on. "I'm not here to give you some speech about how easy it is to change your life," Danny began. "Because it's not easy. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. But I'm here to tell you that it's possible." One of the kids, a girl about 15 with suspicious eyes, raised her hand. "Yeah, but you got lucky. Some rich guy decided to help you. That's not going to happen to the rest of us." Danny nodded. "You're right. I did get help, and I was lucky to meet the right people at the right time. But here's what I learned. Luck isn't just something that happens to you. Sometimes you have to create your own luck by making the right choices when the opportunity comes." He told them about the night he saw Lily being kidnapped, and how he could have just walked away. He told them about all the times over the past 2 years when he wanted to quit school because it was too hard or because he felt like he didn't belong. He told them about the mistakes he made and the lessons he learned. "The thing is," Danny said, "I'm not special. I'm not smarter than you or braver than you. I just got stubborn about not giving up. And now I want to help you get stubborn too." That's when Danny revealed his real surprise. With Robert's help and some funding from several local businesses, Danny had created a new program called Second Chances. It would provide mentoring, tutoring, and support to homeless and at-risk teenagers. But unlike other programs, this one would be run by people who had actually lived through these experiences. "I can't promise you a fairy tale ending like mine," Danny said, "but I can promise you that someone will be there to help you fight for your future. Someone who knows what it's like to be hungry and scared and feel like the world has forgotten about you." After Danny finished speaking, many of the kids wanted to talk to him privately. They had questions about school, about dealing with social workers, about how to get ID cards when you don't have an address. Danny answered every question, remembering how desperately he had wanted these same answers just 2 years ago. Later that evening, Danny, Robert, and Lily sat in the community center's small kitchen, sharing pizza with Sister Maria. The place looked different now. Robert's donations had paid for new furniture, a computer lab, and a small library. But it still felt like the same warm, welcoming place that had given Danny hope when he needed it most. "I'm proud of you," Robert said to Danny, "not just for graduating, but for this program you've created. You're going to help a lot of kids." "We're going to help them," Danny corrected. "I can't do this alone." Lily, who had been quiet during dinner, suddenly spoke up. "I want to help, too. I mean really help. Not just writing checks or volunteering once in a while. I want to be part of this." Danny looked at her with surprise. "Are you sure? It's going to be a lot of work, and it's not glamorous. Most of the time, it's just showing up day after day for kids who might not appreciate it right away." "That's exactly why I want to do it," Lily said. "You showed me that real courage isn't about big dramatic gestures. It's about doing the right thing even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching." As they talked about plans for the program, Danny reflected on how much his life had changed. 2 years ago, he was focused on just surviving one day at a time. Now he was thinking about how to change the entire system that had failed him and so many others. The 3 kidnappers who had taken Lily were serving long prison sentences now. Danny had testified at their trial, and seeing them in handcuffs had given him a sense of closure he hadn't expected. But more than that, it had shown him how far he had come. He was no longer the scared kid hiding behind a dumpster. He was someone who could stand up in a courtroom and demand justice. As Danny walked through his old neighborhood that night, he passed the spot where he used to sleep under the bridge. A part of him would always remember what it felt like to be cold and hungry and alone. But now, instead of making him sad, those memories made him more determined to ensure that other kids wouldn't have to face those same struggles alone. Tomorrow, Danny would start his summer job working with the first group of kids in his new program. In the fall, he would begin college. But tonight, he just felt grateful for the journey that had brought him here, and excited about all the lives he was going to help change. Sometimes the most extraordinary things begin with one person deciding to help a stranger. Danny had learned that the night he chose to save Lily, and now he was ready to spend the rest of his life proving it over and over again.